individuals on the left. And I can go into specifics about that if you want me to. But I think they belittle the subject of circumcision. I think it under their ideologies and stances on certain issues demeans and belittles the work that intactivists do. I think they work against their own interests, if you want to know the truth.
Hello, intactivists. Today I have a very special guest with me, Cody Hurst. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
It's awesome to have you on. So, for those who don't know you, who are you?
I am just an average dude. I got involved with the whole circumcision sort of area back in 2009, 2010 timeframe. And I came for the community and stayed because I found Forgin. And then I sort of just stepped away for, I guess, the better part of a decade and just stepped back into the scene this past summer, spring. And just to see what Forgin was up to, I found your channel and I started joining a couple of Discord servers and yeah, just kind of dipping my toes back into the scene, seeing what's going on, and learning quite a bit.
Okay, so what is your opinion of this movement since you're back in it and figuring out how things are going with intactivism?
Generally speaking, I think it's a good cause, and I support it. Obviously, I think it goes without saying. I mean, people that watch your channel you probably already have the opinion that circumcision in pretty much all its forms. I mean, I suppose if you're an adult, that's a separate discussion, but I think we all agree it needs to come to an end. I think that's pretty much the consensus. And just like a lot of guys that learned about it either later on in life or whenever they learned about it and the details that go into it, how it's done, especially RIC. I think we're all on the same page that this needs to come to an end.
Okay, but do you think that the movement itself, do you think it's doing well now that you've gotten back into it whenever you last checked on it?
It seems to me, just from a casual observer, that there's a lot of, oh, how should we say, there's a lot of opinions that overlap from, how do I say this? It's hard to have the discussion without certain political ideologies also being interjected into the conversation. And I think that it distracts from the overall message and it distracts from the overall goal, in my opinion. And how we solve that issue, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I could go into more detail about that, but that's kind of my general take. Um, people want to leave out politics, uh, and I think that while that's probably a good idea, circumcision is not a topic that you can talk about in a vacuum because of close ties to other subjects that inherently are held by individuals that generally align with one political ideology in particular. That's kind of a watered down way to put it.
Okay. So, what are you currently doing in this movement? Because um, I was told that you're actually starting your own movement that is more politically based.
So, yeah. So I got tired of what I was seeing in other discords, for example. I've been in a couple of them. And I realized that, and obviously my Discord and my, what I made a website. My group is for conservatives, right? And that seems to be, how do we say, not the popular stance in this movement, for a lack of a better term. So I created the Discord basically as generally is just sort of a place for people who don't align with sort of, man, how do I say this without saying it?
I mean, you can
uh,
definitely just say whatever you want. I mean, I'm not going to judge at all. I mean, I have
okay,
my own
well,
gripes
I
about
don't
this
want to
movement.
affect your viewer base, but essentially what I'm saying is the 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 intactivist movement is very fractured, and the people that, from my understanding, have their goals, their missions are set in stone. And a the majority of the individuals that I've seen, especially in the r/circumcision grief server, for example, and in other servers too, very heavily left leaning. That's what I'm trying to say. And with that comes opinions and views about certain subjects that you typically find with individuals on the left. And I can go into specifics about that if you want me to. But I think they belittle the subject of circumcision. I think it under their ideologies and stances on certain issues demeans and belittles the work that intactivists do. I think they work against their own interests, if you want to know the truth. And so we ask, why can't we make more progress? Because I do think we can. I think we can make more progress with the effect that we have. But I think that, if you want to ban circumcision and classify it the same way as the 1996 bill against female genital mutilation, I think that you also need to really address the issue of what's being pushed as far as sex change operations on children, for example. I think that that's something that's being pushed a little bit too, how should we say, freely. And I think those two opinions, those two ideologies of opposing circumcision, but also being pro sex change procedures for minors, shall we say. And while some people say, that's not happening, yeah, it is. And so on one hand, they're denying that it's happening, but also they're against circumcision. And I just sit there and go, how can you be against cutting off part of the male genitalia, especially when a boy is born? But then out the other side of your mouth, be okay with advocating for sex changes for minors. I don't see how those two ideas can coexist. Me
Okay.
personally,
Okay. So
if that makes
my
sense.
question to that is if the people that are intactivists, if they're saying, oh, the sex change operations of children, that's not happening. Do they say that they're against that? Are they like, oh, we're against child sex changes? Or are they just denying that that's happening? I mean, even if they do deny it's happening and they say, or if it was happening, I would still be against it. Like, would that then kind of put you guys on the same wavelength of, oh, okay, well, you're against it. You're just for people who are 20 and above getting sex changes. Like, could you agree with them then?
It's honestly a little difficult to have a conversation with some of these people because they are very quick to lash out at you at the even just bringing up the subject. Like you can't even bring up the subject without them automatically assuming that you're just attacking them. If they say it's not happening, because I've had this argument before, and I would say, well, actually, and then give them the source. They're like, oh, okay, well, it's happening, but I don't agree with it. It's like, okay, so you denied, but then you just admitted, okay, well, it is, but I don't agree with it. And so it's this, like,
So aren't you guys in
okay,
agreement? Because if they said, oh, well, I don't agree with that, like then they're matching your opinion.
I don't think I think it's disingenuous. I don't actually think they mean that, to be honest with you. Some of them just come out outright and just say, no, it's not happening. But they're for it, but it's not happening. You know, it's like, well, there's doctors that literally are trained in this specific subject. Eye doctors don't just go get a medical degree because they want to flash it around and say, look at my medical degree. No, they actually intend on using it. So if there's doctors that are actively advocating for this, they're clearly applying the skills that they say they have. So I don't know.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that when you bring this up to the leftist side of intactivism, which we could argue is probably about 80% of them are probably left leaning Democratic. We could probably argue that point. You're saying that they deny that child sex change surgeries are happening, but after you show them evidence, they say, oh, well, I don't believe that children should have sex change operations, but then you don't believe them. Is that correct?
Right. Because they go from saying, oh, it's not happening to, okay, well, yeah, it's happening, but, so there's always a but. So it's like they don't want to admit to the obvious. And if Republicans are trying to push legislation to get this practice outlawed, now, again, we're just talking about for minors. If you're over 18 or whatever, you're an adult, you can make whatever decision you want. That's that's your bag. You do whatever you want, right? I'm just simply saying, come on, leave the kids out.
Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pods e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other intactivist content to empower, teach, and update intactivists with very important information, as well as being the voice for the intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
Like, just leave the kids out of it. And their wishy-wash stance on the subject, I just don't buy it. I really don't. I don't think they're being honest.
Okay, so when it comes to leftist groups in the intactivism movement, can you just list a couple intactivist groups that are left leaning so people know what you're talking about when, because I know you said circumcision grief, but that's kind of like a Reddit
Yeah, that's a
forum.
Reddit thing.
It's not
Yeah.
really like an intactivist group per se.
No, no, they're not. No. Um, I am not an expert on the intactivist organizations, but I do know some of them. I don't know which ones. They do have an appearance at what I've heard are, you know, gay rights rallies. I'm not sure which ones, to be honest with you. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I do have an opinion about that. And it's a really sticky sort of thing. Like, I don't care who has what sexual preference. I don't care about that. You can have whatever sexual preference, orientation, whatever you want. But I don't want to use individual names, but I was talking to somebody who was, I think, a member of your server, and a couple of other ones. He's already in mine, and he's mentioned to me that I forget what intactivist organization he mentioned, but they would have like a booth or something at a gay rights rally, and so people associate the anti-circumcision movement with gay rights, and I don't think that's quite the association that we want. It's not that we don't value their opinion. Anybody can have an anti-circumcision opinion, right? You could be against it, but your sexual preference has nothing to do with the conversation, right? But I do think that the imaging, the optics, aren't very beneficial. Maybe you might know what I'm talking about with which intactivist organizations appear at gay rights rallies. I'm not.
So if you want me to, the groups that appear at gay rights rallies and gay pride parades, typically is almost all of them, honestly. Intact
Okay.
America for sure. Your Whole Baby, I believe, has definitely done some. Gowdaf, 100% sure. Gowdaf definitely
Mm,
goes a lot to gay pride.
right.
I mean, even Eric Klopper went to a gay pride for Forgin. like back
Right.
in the day. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think. That's kind of like the bread and butter of intactivism is going to gay pride parades.
Yeah.
But my question to you though is what kind of parades or festivals do Republicans or the right-leaning people have that intactivists could go to in replace of or also to complement them going to pride parades and pride booths?
I would say rallies or conventions that align more with bodily integrity. I don't know. Again, I'm not like super into the political scene, but I can tell you there's probably more broader causes or rallies or whatever that align with what I think everyone can get behind. That doesn't just narrow the focus. So, like bodily integrity rallies or human rights rallies or children's rights events, things along that nature. That's where I think intactivist organizations should be. Again, I'm not up on what rallies and what movements they can be a part of. I'm just not in that space. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure they do, but I think that's where intactivism needs to align more. The problem is that inherently that's going to single people out, and people are going to have opposing opinions about that. So that's one hurdle that I think we're going to have to overcome.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely think that a lot of intactivists just kind of go to a
Right. It's just
lot
kind of
of
finding any
oh,
any avenue in to spread the message. And I understand that. I understand like, okay, hey, a gay rights rally, that's probably an avenue, pride parade or whatever. It's an avenue to get the message out. And I agree, but is that the messaging that we need? You see what I'm saying? It's like I'm not saying let's not spread the awareness. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think we need to pick our avenues a little bit more strategically. But then it poses the question: are we just shutting ourselves off to a movement that's already struggling to make an impact as it is? You know what I mean?
yeah, because the only thing that I can think of is like an intactivist booth in like the NRA. They don't have parades, but they have like conventions. So, you know what I mean? Like going
Yeah.
to like pro-gun rallies, if they even have those, but going to places like that, which would be right-leaning for sure. I just don't know how you're going to relate circumcision of minors into, hey, like we have our freedom to bear arms, for
Well, I
instance.
don't think that's the right way to go about it either. That's probably not. It's probably not the avenue you want to go either, right? Because again, yeah, you're going to single out a lot of people, right? So, like I say, I don't know that I have the answer to that. I really don't. And with the intactivist movement, as you said, being about whatever you said, 70, 80% left leaning, it's a struggle, man. I don't know that I have the answer to that, but I made a Reddit post. I'm not sure if you saw it. Maybe you did, but yeah, there's a lot of negative comments, which I expected. And that's Reddit for you, and that's that. But I don't know that I have the answer for you. I think that generally speaking, movements or activist groups like I don't know doctors, maybe pediatric conventions or OBGYN conventions. I don't know if I'm just blabbing because I don't know what I'm talking about, but if those exist, that's where we would want to be. And I'm sure we are. I'm sure intactivist organizations are at those events, right? Because I think that's the most applicable.
Yeah, like the AAP convention, Cockfight
Right.
goes, Bloodstained Men goes. Yes.
Right. Maybe international health organization conventions that the WHO has conventions or the NHS or something like that. Right. That's where we need to be. But yeah, we're just because the topic of circumcision crosses so closely over the boundaries of other subjects like gender affirming care, you just end up pissing a lot of people off, right? When, in my opinion, what you need to do, look, circumcision is a we want to stop that. But again, we go back to the same thing I mentioned before. How can you be anti circumcision, cutting just a part of the male genitalia off, but at the same time be for removing all of it? Right? It's like when you start talking about that, you just piss a lot of people off.
Okay, so when you talk about gender affirming care, do you mean like intersex type of surgeries, or are you talking about like transitioning to a different gender completely?
Yeah, so the intersex thing, that's got a movement of its own, right? I'm more talking about transitioning, right? We're talking about kids. There was a study like between 2019 and 2023. There were 13,000 procedures done that both, included hormone therapy and surgical alterations from individuals 7 to 17 and a half. And I mean, I don't know how to put it, but to me, that's just egregious. It's just egregious. Why are we even talking about that? Right? It's like, but again, me just saying that is, it's going to piss a lot of people off, but that's how I feel about it. This wasn't an issue 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's this, I don't know, to me, it's like it's a fad. It's this new hip thing, we're all into it. And it's not, it's being pushed as more than just a personal choice. And if it was just a personal choice, go for it. You're over 18, you're an adult, do whatever you want. I'm not going to pass any judgment on you. Your business is your business. I'm going to keep my nose out of it. You do what you want. But again, when you start bringing in minors to the conversation, it just, it hits differently. You know what I mean?
Okay, that was Cody Hurst, part 1. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll put his links down in the description below so you can follow him. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part 2 and our other interviews, as well as our other intactivist content we post and release every single week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please share and like this video to get this out to more people. Bye!